Welcome to CivilNet. This past week, we have been commemorating the centenary of the Armenian Genocide of 1915. Armenians from all over the world came to Yerevan, and not only Armenians, we had over 60 delegations, 300 journalists coming to the country to report on the events. Facebook was one of the platforms where people were telling their stories. And one of those stories struck us here at CivilNet. Facebook user Derek Sherinian, he is a very well-known musician, keyboardist, rock keyboardist from the United States who's currently in Moscow, was here in Yerevan to take part in the centennial. What he discovered, I think, left him speechless, left us speechless, and it had to do with his great-grandmother, Eghisapet Sultanian. Derek, thank you for joining us via Skype from Moscow.
Thank you, Maria. It's nice to be with you.
So we want, we can show the photo of your great-grandmother, which really is iconic because, I had been seeing this photo of this, very beautiful Armenian woman dressed in a fedai costume with the rifle in her hand. Tell us the story about your grandmother and this quite remarkable discovery that you made while you were here.
Well, this picture, the famous picture you're referring to, has been in my family ever since I remember, hanging up on the wall. So I grew up seeing this woman from, the point I could see anything. And so there was always questions about, like, when was this war that she fought? We never knew the date. And the story as I knew it as a kid was that Elizabeth had met a husband, and then they went to go fight, and then she had 2 children that she sent with a sister to America to hold on to until the war was over. But then, while something happened while they were in the U.S., and then she was left behind and sold to a family in Boston called the Manoogians. And so we knew that something treacherous had happened, but we didn't know who was to blame. But there's I have at my house in LA, documents of the adoption papers, and that there was a fee paid. I forgot if it was 20,000 US or 50,000, but it's one of the 2 figures. And so there was definitely money that changed hands. So we knew something treacherous happened there.
Okay, so Derek, I'm going to interrupt so that we follow the thread of the story. So Eghisapet, or Elizabeth, as you said, your great-grandmother, she has 2 children. And yes, she gives them in trust to her sister, who then takes them to
her sister and her husband.
Right, and there's things that, there's this story that they were sold to the Manoogians of Boston, right?
Correct.
But which war was Elizabeth fighting? Do we know the dates?
We estimate that in the picture, she looks to me in her early 20s, maybe. I mean, from what it looks like to me, I don't think she's much younger or much older. And according to my aunt in Yerevan, even though the tombstone says she was born 1899, she suspects that it's more like 1891.
Right. So this...
So perhaps she was 23, 24 in that picture, which would put it right around 1915, wouldn't it?
Right. Okay, so you knew the story. You knew there was an issue of the grandmother being sold. But what did you discover when you were in Yerevan?
Well, first thing we discovered is that I found out that it was the aunt that sold my grandmother to the Manoogians. And this is an aunt that I knew as a kid. I remember, when I was 5, she came from Boston my family lives in Santa Cruz, and she was auntie from Boston, and she brought the chudeg. Yeah. And I remember that was the first time, and then she would always send it to us every year. And I remember her, but this is the woman that sold my grandmother. Now, the story goes like this. So the Manoogians adopt my grandmother, and they say to her, listen, if strangers ever come to you and say that, you belong to them, don't believe them and just run or whatever. So she's had this brainwashing going on. So later, when she turned in her 20s, the aunt from Boston that sold her I guess, was in Boston, and she, out of shame or guilt, went to find Mariam, my grandmother. They reconnect, and they make an arrangement for Elizabeth to come to Boston so Marianne could reunite with the mother.
So where was Elizabeth at this point? Then?
She was in Cairo, and she moved from, I think she lived in Istanbul for a while, then she lived in Cairo, and then she ended up dying in Moscow, and then they brought her body back here. But at that point, I think she came from Cairo to Boston to reunite with my grandmother. But by that time, my grandmother was just, had a cold heart and just didn't want to be involved. And it really broke Elizabeth's heart. And there's letters that I'm in possession of that Yazidian, my cousin Maria, her father wrote the letters and transcribed for her about her heart. And I have them transcribed by someone in Los Angeles because I can't read Armenian. And the letters are just heartbreaking of how she's longing for her firstborn Mariam, and every minute, every day I think of you, and my heart wants, please just give me a word. I want to know about your family, like, you know.
So what happens is that, so Elizabeth, wherever she ends up getting remarried and
Yes.
having 3 more children.
Yes.
The daughter, which she renames Miriam after the firstborn, Miriam, your grandmother, that was given away, Bedros
Right.
and Kaspar, right?
Yes.
Okay, so then how does, who is Maria Yazıcan, your cousin that discovered you, or you discovered while you were just recently in Yerevan?
I posted, like, every April 24th, I always post a picture of my grandmother with the gun. I mean, a picture is worth 1,000 words. We've heard that before. Well, there's a great example of that with that picture. So I posted it, and I had, like, one more night. I got home after going out my final night in Yerevan, and I opened up my Facebook like at 1 in the morning, and I had a flight out. I had to leave the hotel at 12 the next morning. I read this Facebook message, and it's a woman saying, "Hello, Derek. I see that you posted a picture of your great-grandmother. Well, that is my grandmother, and if it is your great-grandmother, I think we're probably related. And she's buried here in Yerevan, and I have a lot of photos and information if you want to meet." So immediately I, like, write her back going,
yes,
of course I want to meet, please. So we made an arrangement. They met me at my hotel at the Hyatt, like, at 9 a.m. And just, it was very emotional seeing these people. I was, even though I've never met them in person or just even heard of them hours earlier, it was just, like, amazing. And even the people in the hotel that were working behind the desk were, like, you could see them tearing up from the...
It was an emotional moment.
Yeah, it was very emotional. And so then we proceeded to go to the cemetery, which was beautiful. I was struck by how beautiful all the tombstones were compared to, like, what you see in America. You see these beautiful, like, etched in the granite, and I've just never seen it, and it was
so
awesome.
you've pieced together, you know, a small portion of your family history. Have you told your family back in the States?
Oh yeah, everyone's going crazy. Mariam's daughter, only living child, my dad passed away 3 years ago, but her daughter Araxi, who is still alive, is just, like, so emotional. I mean, I told her the story, and I told her that it was Auntie that sold her mother, and, you know, this was so shocking to her. Like, she didn't know. She always thought it was, like, the uncle or someone else.
Right, right. And so now where do you go from here, Derek? I mean, are you going to try and get some more information? Are you planning on coming back to Yerevan
I am,
to
for
piece
sure.
together the story of Yerisapet Sultanian? What a phenomenal story.
There's definitely a story here. I mean, it gets as heartbreaking. I mean, there's a story that my Aunt Maria told me where Elizabeth, before she went to war, she witnessed her father and her brother killed by the Turks, and then they cut out the baby out of the pregnant sister's stomach. The sister's name was Nhyութի, and they cut her baby right out, and Elizabeth witnessed all of this.
And yet she went on to live. It's incredible.
You know, it's just insane.
Derek, thank you so much for sharing the story, a little piece of your family history. I suspect that we will be following the trail and seeing if here at CivilNet we can help you piece together more parts of your story. So thank you. And I guess this is what it means to be a global nation and then having access to social platforms like Facebook and bringing people together after more than 100 years.
It is really cool. I mean, think about it. Without that Facebook or having it out there, how are these people ever going to, connect with me? Or it's really a blessing. And the timing of it all, with some little time left on my trip to Yerevan to celebrate the 100-year, it just is it'll be a very memorable 4 days there that I'll never forget. Just precious,
I bet. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. And as I said, we'll be following your story. And good luck trying to find the rest of the history.
Thank you, Maria. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. I'd like to remind our viewers that my guest was rock keyboardist Derek Sherinian, who discovered a very integral, important, emotional part of his family history while here for the 100th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. Keep following CivilNet.